Hey everybody, thanks for being here. I'm Zach. So we're gonna have a conversation about the great debate, Bitcoin's environmental footprint and all that good stuff. It's gonna be fun. For the purposes of this conversation, we're gonna assume that there is some pro-social value to having an alternative financial layer in the world. So some energy being expended is acceptable. We'll talk about how to bring down that energy footprint a bit, but let's just set those stakes for how we're gonna do this thing. I'm gonna let our two lovely panelists introduce themselves. Leemon, tell us a bit about who you are.
Hi, I'm Leemon Baird, co-founder of Hedera, an L1, I'm a blockchain.
Vilma?
Good to be here.
Hello everyone, I'm Vilma. I'm co-founder of Fire, based in Dubai, and happy to be here with you today.
Fantastic. So I think the timing of this conversation is really great. We're pretty much fresh on the heels of Ethereum's merge, which transitions the network from proof of work to proof of stake. I did kind of want to just ask your opinion about that transition, right? It's a major step forward for Ethereum, which is the second largest cryptocurrency by market capitalization. What does that mean, I guess, for the industry as a whole for us to have seen the merge happen just a couple months ago?
Oh, I think this is wonderful. So what we are seeing is our industry maturing. Of course, we started with proof of work, which wastes lots of electricity. You've already heard about how much electricity Bitcoin is using. But this allows Ethereum to do proof of stake, which uses far less energy, in fact, thousands of times better. And so Ethereum now is thousands of times better than Bitcoin when it comes to how much energy you use for each transaction. Now, you can do better than that. Hedera is thousands of times better than Ethereum, but you can improve. Bitcoin was the good first step, but you can do better, and that's what Ethereum just demonstrated.
Got it. So Vilma, I'm going to put this question to you. I mean, what are your thoughts on the merge? How does it relate to what Fire's been building, and does it sort of change the context of conversations such as this?
I think it's a breakpoint for the whole industry, taking in consideration that now we are using 99% less electricity for Ethereum, which means that it's finally the carbon footprint is something that our industry can be proud about. In our case, it's slightly around 2x even lower. In Ethereum's case, I would say that this definitely gives opportunity for the whole industry to expand on more institutional as well as in Fortune 500s who have been till now very much considered in the carbon footprint caused by the industry. Therefore, it opens barriers as well as opens up whole new conversations with, for example, even electric vehicle companies as well as different sectors that have been hesitant to building anything in this industry due to the environmental impact.
Gotcha. So Bitcoin is still the top dog. We'll get to that in a bit. But I think in recent years, sort of a lot of alternative layer ones have presented themselves as the greenest blockchain of them all. Whether that's Algorand or Near or Hedera or you name it. I kind of wanted to ask, what is animating that marketing push? Is that to court ESG investors? Is that to put these chains in conversation with normal finance? In your view, why the push for that title?
Well, there's huge interest all across the world in industry and individuals who want to lower carbon footprint. So the less electricity you use, the less carbon you are dumping into the atmosphere. And you could say, well, I'll build a solar panel, but then you're using a solar panel for this that you could have used for something else. So honestly, the greenest form of electricity is the electricity you don't use, negawatts. That's the greenest form of electricity. So there's huge interest in using as little as possible, and then there's interest to buying carbon credits to make up for that little bit. So we do that, and we're carbon negative. We actually buy more carbon credits than the electricity. So it's good to do that, and there's a lot of interest in that. But even more importantly is use less in the first place. Everyone is interested in that right now.
Got it. I want to stay on carbon credits for a minute, because I know there's incumbent systems for tracking carbon credits. I kind of want to shift to sort of like the conversation around crypto native approaches to tracking environmental footprint and even reducing environmental footprint. We're seeing a lot of momentum around refi or regenerative finance. This is sort of harnessing the degenerate impulses of traders everywhere to be positive for the environment at large. I'm going to put this to you first, Leemon. Are you seeing any experiments in that may meaningfully move the needle, or is this still going to be a very niche part of the environmental impact conversation?
Not niche. It's small right now, but it's growing extremely rapidly. There are a huge number of projects building on Hedera and on other ledgers right now to trade carbon credits, to trade green energy, to trade non-green energy with recording how much you're emitting so that you can track it, to combine non-green energy with the credit to create green energy. All of these things are being done. Things like the Guardian project that was built on Hedera helps companies to track exactly what their emissions are and then buy credits. So this is something that the whole industry is doing right now, and there is enormous interest in this right now.
Yeah, Vilma, in terms of experiments around refi or other efforts, what are you seeing on your network or others that kind of catch your eye as it relates to, again, possible solutions that are born out of the crypto movement?
Yeah, I think it's more important to take a preventive approach rather than fixing problems that already occurred. So that's what we are doing. We give a score for companies according to how sustainable they are. We pay for being sustainable, so we directly incentivize sustainability. For example, if in case of Ethereum, the more money you have, the more stake you will have. In our case, the more sustainable action your company takes, the more you will be rewarded. So I think the preventive measures as well as understanding a change of behavior towards ESG costs, towards measuring the impact. Because if you go to speak up with companies, they have activities to take towards sustainability. However, nobody is measuring what is the impact, what are the results that we are getting from those activities.
Got it. So let's go back to Bitcoin. Let's talk about proof of work. Let's talk about proof of work because it's mining, right? It's using electrical energy to prove out blocks that secure this network. You mentioned it as sort of step one for an industry. What's the best case scenario, the best case understanding of why proof of work was necessary and may continue to have a role going forward in the future?
Sure. So proof of work was a great first step. You have to somehow make a ledger secure. So you have to have some scarce resource so that one person doesn't just become a million computers on your network and dominate it. So the first thought was, why don't we just intentionally burn electricity and make that the scarce resource? Only people who can afford to waste lots of electricity can play, and that keeps it secure. Well, that was a good first step. The only problem is you're wasting a real world resource. What would be far better is to just take the cryptocurrency itself, just ones and zeros, and let that be the scarce resource. Then you're not wasting any real world resource. And so that's why the whole industry is moving to proof of stake. It's just an obvious next step. That doesn't mean step one was bad. It was a good step one, but now it's time for step two.
All right, so proof of stake is step two. Like, where do we envision step three? Within the proof of stake atlas, like what becomes the V3 that ultimately cryptocurrency could move toward?
Absolutely. So we have a whole stack here. At the very bottom for consensus, you go from proof of work to proof of stake, we're done. You can't get any better than no wastage. But the whole rest of the stack has lots of things that need to be improved. Even the consumer use interface at the top level, making sure people don't lose their keys, DREC, decentralized recovery, all these things need to be improved. Things like Guardian, where people are starting to track on the ledger, needs to be improved. There's a huge range of improvements that will be coming over the next 100 years, and they're happening now. But at the very bottom layer, yeah, going from proof of work to proof of stake was the right answer. That's done.
Gotcha. And so, Vilma, with your project, what specifically are you doing to sort of advance that conversation? What is that technologically, what does that look like in addition to what you're presenting to the market?
So what we do is we redefine the consensus, making proof of activity based on the previous activity of the hash. Therefore, it's not proof of work. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with proof of work. It's excellent. However, our industry is 12 years old, which means that we are just in the transformation phase and discovery of not just innovation, but also disruption. Therefore, I think it's all about designing new models, mental models, as well as behavior. So in our case, is proof of activity. Of course, in Hedera's case, is a Hashgraph. I believe that we can coexist with multiple consensus mechanism, and that's how it should be. Respect proof of work, nothing wrong with it as well. I remember mining Bitcoin in 2017 and repurposing the energy for growing tomatoes. So I think if we repurpose the energy for other purposes as well as store energy, diversify the energy, use solar, wind power and repurpose, for example, use weather agnostic machines, so you need less cooling. If we rethink how we can use more sustainable energy in proof of work, there is nothing wrong with it.
I like the nods, the imagined Bitcoin maxis in the room, like proof it's cool, don't fight us, it's all right. I guess I want to go back to like this never-endingness of this environmental debate. It seems like every bull cycle, this conversation rears its ugly head. There's a lot of histrionics, a lot of feelings, as there should be when it comes to sustainability issues. What are your thoughts, Leemon, on why this conversation keeps happening and why it seems to be kind of like part of the Bitcoin discovery cycle?
Part of why it's happening is that people think proof of work is the only thing there is, that you have to waste lots of electricity. Well, you don't. The whole industry is moving away from that. So that's not true. There's also people who say, well, blockchain has no value anyway. Why are you wasting anything on it? That is now being proven totally false. Many real-world businesses are building on blockchain in ways that are fundamentally important. And even if all you cared about is being green, if your credit card is something you need, Visa credit card transactions use 90 times as much energy as Hedera transactions. So if you did it through Hedera rather than a credit card, you're still using 90 times less energy. And so if all you cared about is being green, you should still do it. There's a real value. And you then are decentralized, you have better trust, it is faster, it is lower cost. You have huge advantages. Ledgers are going to take over the world the same way databases took over the world of record keeping on paper. It's the same thing.
So Vilma, you've been in the industry for a long time. What are your thoughts on whether or not this is a bit of a deja vu conversation, or if this conversation is indeed advancing to a higher degree of nuance as we get going on this thing?
I think it's a stage of a transformation and continuous transformation. If we look at paper money, we look about aluminum coins, billets made from plastic as well as trees. I think it's time to go to digital money, and in this case, I would consider that it's just about changing the paradigm on thought processes on what is right now more productive and more looking forward. Right in earliest industries, there is always time that we need to consider and understand what is wrong and what is right. In Bitcoin's case, many people say, okay, it uses the same amount of electricity than Argentina or Netherlands. However, how much electricity there is right now in unused, Bitcoin could be mined in IoT devices. It could be mined in farms where they already have electricity going on. Electricity going to waste is statistically higher amount than the amount of electricity ever used for Bitcoin currently.
I guess my question now is, as we talk about this, and we talk about sort of the broader sustainability issues in which the cryptocurrency industry exists, I wanted to talk about how this interfaces with sort of the regulatory conversation. I know there's a bunch of front lines in the regulatory battle as it relates to cryptocurrency here in the US, elsewhere around the world. Do you see the energy conversation impacting or intersecting with the regulatory conversations that you hear about from Hedera or elsewhere?
Absolutely. In fact, the regulators are actually very interested in carbon footprint, energy usage, environment. This is very much an interest to them. And our entire industry is very interested in having some clarity on the regulations. And as far as we can tell, I think the world is moving towards starting to get some of that clarity. And that will be a huge boon to the whole industry. And the world governments could have just said, we hate blockchains, we're going to stamp it out, but they're not. They recognize the value of it and are now trying to find a way to live with it. That's a good sign.
Is there a conversation in there about proof of stake versus proof of work, specifically among the regulatory class? What do you think?
There is. Yes, I've talked with people who are in positions where they have influence here, and they are very interested in that because they want all the benefits of a blockchain, but they really don't want to use as much electricity as Argentina. They really would like to use that electricity for something else. And so when you tell them, you can have the best of both worlds. In fact, you could even have better things. You can have finality. You can have all sorts of good things without wasting the energy. They're very interested in that.
When you have conversations along the policy lines, do you end up encountering some of those same talking points? Do you hear the energy usage, I'd imagine, is a big thing that is being presented to you?
Yes, definitely. I hear speaking about carbon taxation, how carbon taxation and carbon offset will affect the industry. I'm very happy that the industry has come up with climate accord as well as other initiatives to streamline the regulatory framework, respect having certain uniformity and understanding on how we can all work together to make the industry greener. However, I think from part of regulators there is still very much uncertainty in understanding or comparing us to fiat currencies, energy consumption, and there is no understanding on how mathematical models actually require electricity to be viable. So it's always a dual conversation with, between transparency, privacy, traceability, and then electricity. So I assume that in the end, transparency and privacy and verifiability will gain the conversation, and I assume that in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we will not only be speaking about green Bitcoin, but Bitcoins will be powered by the sun.
Gotcha. You mentioned sort of this idea of sort of self-regulating or self-policing as an industry.
Yes.
Are there any sort of standards or tools that you wish you would see more widely adopted across the space that both track and ultimately help improve the carbon footprint of the industry itself? And toss that to you, Leemon.
Absolutely. So I mentioned Guardian as a tool for helping you track things. There are also multiple markets for carbon offsets and other things. These are important, and as an industry, we need to get behind all these things. Our grant giving organization, HBAR Foundation, has 3 major things that they're giving grants for. ESG is one of them. This is a big deal, and we need to do everything we can, including giving grants to startups, to move us in this direction.
Got it. So Vilma, again, looking forward, you mentioned sort of the crystal ball of where this conversation will likely be a few years down the road. Beyond what you just shared, do you see any other sort of animating tensions that could bring this conversation to a better place?
Now, mining moving from China to US, I assume the weather-agnostic mining machines, as well as overall the understanding of the conversation being in the hand of regulators, we can come up with more Ethereum improvement proposals to focus more on sustainable finance, as well as from Hedera's side, they are heavily investing into regenerative finance, so are us on Fireside, giving grants for this initiative. So I think it's behavior change, and I think that this behavior change needs to be rooted in the hardware, or in this case, in the mental models, or when developers are building, thinking that this is not just for profit, it's also for benefit, and with this benefit comes the profit. Fantastic.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your thoughts on this important topic. Join me in thanking our wonderful panel, and we wish you a great day here at Web Summit. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.